Our society and our world are full of these invented and built up and contrived facades. And sometimes some people come along with a hammer and smash that facade. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash that facade. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash that facade.
Welcome to the future. Shit where you please. The Wi-Fi's killer, but there's no more bees. So there's hardly any flowers, there are very few trees, and you'll pay $1,000 for some honey for your tea. But we got these awesome collars, mine's an Apple Model 3. It allows for better movement than the Tesla X Elite. It lets you customize the ads that it implants in every dream. And for premium subscribers, doesn't shock you in your sleep. But it doesn't stop there. It can analyze your speech, and if it hears disinformation, then it notifies police. It's a swift re-education, but it knocks you off your feet like your booster every 7th week. I faced the future boldly with 2 eager open eyes, and I picked a couple nuggets up that blew my fucking mind. Like you can taxidermy someone while they're technically alive, and they'll shine when it's election time. See, the Democratic voter base will pay them zero. Never mind if voting for the scarecrow is a vote along their party lines. They could stare into its marble eyes and claim there's something dignified. Unlike real politicians, this one doesn't need an oxygen or kit supply. But its function is the same as those who came before. The goals are never misaligned. It still spends all its working time performing pre-recorded fleecing sessions where it sugarcoats your slow and hungry genocide, while pouring billions into Nazi coffers, all the while selling you the story that we're moments till the MiGs arrive. So fuck it, ask Zelensky if he'll help replace our leaded pipes. Watch a fleet of Penske's show, stacks of bills in every size. Guess it only took a black sun and a couple Heils. Honorary goose step and some Nazi boots a quarter mile, all while Biden sneers his sordid smile. I don't know what was in this morning's vial, but it makes him stare 1,000 yards through all the prompters and the cards like he can smell the nearest child. His eyes are wide and wild, wider than the grave in which another 1,000 families were tossed in as I typed until they rose up to the sky unceremoniously piled. Which sort of flies right in the face of all this network ticker tape where the American economy has superhuman vitals.
And sometimes some people come along with a hammer.
See, I like to think my trial's gonna play like a recital. I'll denounce the world around me and accuse the most entitled, who weaponize their titles, whose pull is something title, who'd starve us all to death to best delight their blighted idol. So they might destroy the record, and I will never get to vinyl. So my word is not immortal, but it's final.
It's a brilliant, powerful hammer. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash that facade.
People, you don't think I see you crying in your cars, but I do. Sometimes I can feel it at a red light, someone at my side trying to muddle through. See them wiping their eyes in the rear view, like black hole sun in the sky. Why the fuck won't you come when I need you? Well, this moment in time is as close as we'll be and as far as I'll meet you. 2 windows in between us, new moon in the house of Venus. One stranger who sees you and reads your features knows that your alibi might be tight, but it's not quite leak-proof. So if you're sitting at the light and you're crying in your car, just know that I see you. And it's a 50-50 that I'm bloodshot, gun-shy, once bitten, twice tried, ribs pried wide to the sky till I'm see-through.
That's you, in case you don't recognize yourself.
struggling to breathe, but I do. I see you stumble in your everyday grief like I do. I try, but I do. I'm twice bitten too. My mind's split in two. My knuckles bright white from the 10 to the 2. And the song in my head is the theme for a fugue. A state of decay through the filter of corporate news, where they edit the grays and the blues. They whitewash the brown till they drown out the natural hues. And then it's just another fact to refuse, that the corporate ladders for hanging the company noose. Consider it one of your perks, after all it's communal in use. So you can come and hang till your legs go limp and they're shaking you loose. Now you watch 5 co-workers opt for the alternate exit, neatly suspended above where you wolf down your food. And your company gets its incentives embellished by harping on wellness, suggesting you'd best take time for your mental health after your 14 hours are through. Like we gave you a bottle to piss in and fixed up a noose on the crossbeam. Christ, what more can we do? So if you struggle to breathe any moment that you aren't asleep, then remember, most of Americans fear for their savings, fear for their shelter, fear for their babies. You aren't the fringe of exception, but rather a perfect example of capital's rule. And you're far less alone than the ruling class tells you is true. You're far less alone than the ruling class tells you is true. I see you crying in your cars, but I do.
Who are these people? 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 Who are these people?
I watched a man decide to stand up for us, and I watched them take him away. So I had to break down your respect for the process, but the process won't be saved. Hi, I'm Nancy, and I love ice cream.
I enjoy it.
But not as much as watching people forced out of their homes.
I like it better than anything else.
Watching people forced out in the streets to live alone, and knowing that I own every homeless set of bones.
I don't know why, but it seems to agree with me. I have a lot of energy.
It's all more support from my hideous and ill-gotten throne, the weight of which is too much for you to bear alone. Which is why you ended up threadbare alone, kicked off your benefits and left to your own. The diner that you worked at was told it could open its doors, but there's no clientele, and it's probably just as well, because half of the staff didn't last, so they can't come to work anymore. You can't expect a corpse to pull itself through the door to flip omelets for $8 an hour anymore. Make your own food, clean your own floors, fake your own news, fill a whole morgue. Get a film crew out front, but don't let them in the doors. Let's keep it frontline heroes, America's soldiers, you know the score. Joe knows the score. I watched a man decide to stand up for us, and I watched them take him away. So I had to break down your respect for the process, but the process won't be saved.
Who are these people?
Stop saying the election is so goddamn important and start telling Joe he needs to rein in his supporters. Oh, that's right. Joe can't even rein in his tongue behind his resin molars. Pardon me for asking for some faculties from someone who is vying to control us. The man is not quite yet speechless, but you can bet he's soulless. And if you think he can stop the greatest threat that's ever held a public office, you might be Joe's equal in the ignorance department. But I can guarantee you we will finish what we started. A rabid coalition of activists and politicians, sex workers, educators, artists. Those of us who followed Bernie so close and fell the farthest. Who will not falter until all of us are cared for, regardless of whether it would turn a profit. Now I am not a leader or a teacher or a prophet, but I am here to proudly say today is the day I start campaigning for the role of Speaker of the House that we will build from the bones of the old Congress. And when I say bones, I do not mean framework or stones, I mean literally bones of the old guard keeping us from progress. Tonight's the last dawn before things get their darkest. Tonight's the last dawn before things get their darkest.
Who are these people?
The calm before the storm, the calm before the harvest. Oh, that's right. Oh, that's right.
Who are these people?
Tonight's the last dawn before things get their darkest.
What did you see?
It couldn't have been me, sir. I was front row in my AOC t-shirt, foie gras sucking on a press release, sir. My head down, fourth shot, good little sheep, sir. Sit down, sweetie. The adults are gonna speak first. They trust the science and they're terrified of research. Here to thank our healthcare heroes, they've been feeding to the burnout, feet first. Until suddenly they dip mid-shift, take a header off a bridge. Such a shame, they were really such a sweet nurse. Now they'll never get the card and the cold slice of pizza meant to thank them for their teamwork. Now they'll never get the baggie full of checks mixed, which would be the one reward they'd see for the moms they had to intubate. And the countless cries of grief since we've been haunted by the specter of the C-word. Now all the applause for our healthcare heroes rings a very hollow note because we played it out like Freebird. See, add the ones and zeros in our fragile checks and balances are checks for all the wealthy who have such unholy talents that we think it's patriotic that we all got zero balances. And re-elect Pelosi so she'll face our toughest challenges.
Just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me. Us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Who are these people?
It's us. We're these people.
I love that intro. I love that intro so much.
I'm here with a different co-host this time, Oz LaFave.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on.
Friend of the show, DJ Joe Nice. How are you, friend?
What's good? And you hear Nick say this all the time. The United States is the most propagandized country in the world.
We are so fucked, you guys. Again, I'm sorry for being cynical, but seriously, we're fucked. We are fucked. We are well and truly fucking fucked.
Just appreciate all the work that you do and the platforms that you all are providing.
Hey, you. Doing good. How are you guys doing?
And as independent media, we have a responsibility to be, we don't hide our bias, obviously, but we must stay true to the facts.
What's up, Pam?
Cheers and salutations. Smoke 'em if you got them.
But I am here with a man that I've been waiting to talk to for the last couple of years, Nico House.
As an educator, what I would suggest is that, first of all, podcasts like these are made.
So you need to be an example for the people and for the future, knowing that your words can actually change the future.
What do you feel? What would Kwame Ture feel we would have to do?
Well, politics is every day of every minute. You have to be aware of what's going on. Not voting on one day, so the vote has never meant anything. So I'm not a Democrat.
See, I would call that guy the Black Obama.
No. The issues that we talk about, listen to us.
As always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
INN News.
What's up, everybody? It's another episode of INN News. another Wednesday. I'm Reef Breland, and here with me as always, my co-host, Collin Radix-Carter, aka Care Bear. Care Bear, how are you? You alright?
I should have off.
You should have off, but turns out I still need you here, so
that doesn't change the fact why I should have off.
No,
what's that?
You should. Everyone should have the day off. Just make it a full holiday. Give everyone a long weekend. That's what anyone wants anyway, right? But
sure.
I mean, it's either that or Juneteenth ice cream. That's as best as we could do. Colin. Is some ice cream. So
I have the day off because I don't eat ice cream. Fun fact.
Sure. But luckily, I have a co-host who likes talking about stories on Wednesday and wouldn't miss it for anything.
Except if I really had to. So
yes, occasionally you do sometimes have to. I have to turn that off. Angel reminding people to like and subscribe. But we brought some stories this week.
Yes.
So what did you bring?
So we talked about this last week, right? Regarding it's just so everything regarding Palestine now is such a blur. Like it's hard to kind of keep track what we talk about every week because we basically talk Palestine almost every single week since October. But last week we talked about the strike in Rafah, where over 270, I'm sure it's a lot higher than that, but 270 plus Palestinians were killed. So there were some murmurings, and I know some places reported on this that we had U.S. military was involved in that. I saw a few Twitter videos that kind of talked about that. But we actually do have an article from Robert Inlakesh. That's how you say his last name, right? Inlakesh.
We'll
Inlakesh.
get it right.
There we go. Inlakesh. Who did an investigation, and it turns out there were actually U.S. troops who were a part of that strike. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later tonight, and much later tonight, given that it is Pride Month. And we have a lot of people who say that Israel is great in democracy in terms of, having equal rights for the LGBTQ plus community. It's the only country in the Middle East that allows that. That's kind of a little misleading, according to what I'm going to report out tonight. But we are going to hear some Palestinians, a few of whom are queer, who actually want to speak out against this. I actually do follow a Palestinian who lives in Spain but is queer, who has tweeted out a lot about this, as well as others within the article that I'm going to read from The Guardian that also talk about this. So we are going to talk about how this genocide is relating to Palestinians who happen to be queer, and then on a macro level, just in terms of pride and celebrations of pride happening throughout the country and around the world, all for the month through the summer, and how it relates to the ongoing genocide in Gaza. And what do you have, Reef?
Well, I have a couple of things. I think you brought an extra story tonight, too, right?
Yes, I'll talk about that later, after you're done with yours.
Yep. So
segments.
I have Shell is leaving Africa, everyone's favorite oil conglomerate. And you wonder why that might be the case. Well, we're going to get into it. There's some legal fuckery, as they would say. So, we're going to look into that. And I also brought some stuff about the Chiquita banana murderers. Chiquita is now having to pay people off for having murdered some folks. And we're gonna get into how that happened and what that might be. If you're wondering, I just wanted to bring a banana story because I know Indy loves bananas. So we gotta talk about bananas, everyone's favorite fruit.
Fun fact: Indy does not actually like bananas. Hence the
Such a
joke.
bad
Inside joke.
monkey. He doesn't like all the good things: watermelon, bananas, peanut butter. He's like, no, I don't like any of that. This is a bad monkey. Bad monkey. But anyway, all right. So as you know, we are demonetized. So you can get around that system by going to ko-fi.com/IndianNewsNetwork, scanning this QR code on your screen, or if you're in the live chat, you can put !donate, and we'll send you the link to Ko-fi. You can leave us a little super chat. Should come up for us on screen. It's nice. But you know, we get it. Times are tight. You don't have to, but it is appreciated on the couch. All right, and look at all you. We got some new names on the board. Some new names on the board. You might get your name up here if you go to Ko-fi and give us the money. It might be nice. You can always go to Cash App, cash.app/money_Indie News Network. You know how that works on Cash App. You put that little money sign. News Network, very easy. Patreon.com/Indie News Network. PayPal.me/Indie News Network. You can get to us that way. Or you can give us some Rumble rants at rumble.com/she/Indie News Network, which I will be checking between seconds. Anything else, Collin? Anything else we gotta get into? I think that's it.
No, I don't think so. But yeah, just as an update, we mentioned this last week, but we met Jesse's goal in terms of money for the new laptop. So I think now we're extending that. We're pushing that goal to 2,000.
We can always
I think really that
in general, but
what's that?
We can always change the name of that. I just gotta go through that.
Okay. Well, so it's not to say that all of that money now. It's not to say we're giving
all of that.
All of that to Jesse. He's good with the $1,000. So, but I think just in general, just costs in terms of us keeping, this channel running, in terms of the programs that we use, that costs money. Any memberships that we need in order for us to produce the channel, that also costs money. So like the itty bitty things that you may not necessarily think of in terms of running a channel, I wouldn't say is big, but as baby as ours, costs money. So that we're often paying out of pocket for us to use. So so if you're able to donate, that would be appreciated. But like we've said this before, we are looking to get some equipment in terms of doing some more on the ground stuff. Whenever there's something popping off. So we are researching into that to see how much all of that equipment will cost. And we'll let you guys know what exactly we need, and we'll do another fundraiser for that. But that being said, thank you, guys, for helping us, helping Jesse, and helping us on the channel in general. We love you. And thank you.
Yeah.
Guy also thanks you too.
Yes.
So yeah, as we've mentioned, we have an extra story, and it's a rant. I haven't done one of these in, I think, over a year. That's kind of what I was known for. Those of you who are new, when we first started this channel, one of my segments would be a rant, Collin's rant. So that would be like I rant or just go off on a topic or an issue pertaining to something political. Sometimes not, but usually it's a political story that I'll just go off on. I haven't done them in a while. I figured since today is Juneteenth, And I kind of ranted on Juneteenth before. Actually, not really, because last year, we did read an article that Margaret Kimberly posted regarding Juneteenth. You can find that segment on the channel. We are going to reference it a little bit tonight. That's one of the good things now that we actually have a backlog. of clips now. We can refer to ourselves now in terms of stuff that we have mentioned or discussed. So we are going to reference that article that Margaret Kimberly wrote a little bit tonight. But we are going to talk about a little bit about Juneteenth because it is, well, it became a federal holiday in 2021. So it is somewhat relatively new, and not everybody will understand the history behind the holiday. I don't want to assume everyone does. So I do want to give a quick-ish overview of why Juneteenth is, why is it in existence in this country, especially now. So we're going to look at a TED Talk that talks a little bit more about it, and then we'll continue on with the rest of the segment. So whenever you're ready, Reef.
Yes, sir.
One day, while hiding in the kitchen, Charlotte Brooks overheard a life-changing secret. At the age of 17, she'd been separated from her family and taken to William Nealon's Texas plantation. There, she was made to do housework at the violent whims of her enslavers. On that fateful day, she learned that slavery had recently been abolished, but Nealon conspired to keep this a secret from those he enslaved. Hearing this, Brooks stepped out of her hiding spot, proclaimed her freedom, spread the news throughout the plantation, and ran. That night, she returned for her daughter, Tempe, and before Nealon's spiteful bullets could find them, they were gone for good. For more than 2 centuries, slavery defined what would become the United States, from its past as the 13 British colonies to its growth as an independent country. Slavery fueled its cotton industry and made it a leading economic power. 10 of the first 12 presidents enslaved people. And when U.S. chattel slavery finally ended, it was a long and uneven process. Enslaved people resisted from the beginning by escaping, breaking tools, staging rebellions, and more. During the American Revolution, Vermont and Massachusetts abolished slavery, while several states took steps towards gradual abolition. In 1808, federal law banned the import of enslaved African people, but it allowed the slave trade to continue domestically. Approximately 4 million people were enslaved in the U.S. when Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860. Lincoln opposed slavery, and though he had no plans to outlaw it, his election caused panic in southern states, which began withdrawing from the Union. They vowed to uphold slavery and formed the Confederacy, triggering the start of the American Civil War. A year into the conflict, Lincoln abolished slavery in Washington, D.C., legally freeing more than 3,000 people. And 5 months later, he announced the Emancipation Proclamation. It promised freedom to the 3.5 million people enslaved in Confederate states, but it would only be fulfilled if the rebelling states didn't rejoin the Union by January 1st, 1863. And it bore no mention of the roughly 500,000 people in bondage in the border states of Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, and Missouri that hadn't seceded. When the Confederates to surrender, Union soldiers began announcing emancipation, but many southern areas remained under Confederate control, making it impossible to actually implement abolition throughout the South. The war raged on for 2 more years, and on January 31st, 1865, Congress passed the 13th Amendment. It promised to end slavery throughout the U.S., except as punishment for a crime. But to go into effect, 27 states would have to ratify it first.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the Civil War virtually ended with the surrender of Confederate General Robert E. Lee on April 9, 1865. But although slavery was technically illegal in all southern states, it still persisted in the last bastions of the Confederacy. There, enslavers like Nealon continued to evade abolition until forced. This was also the case when Union General Gordon Granger marched his troops into Galveston, Texas on June 19th and announced that all enslaved people there were officially free and had been for more than 2 years. Still, at this point, people remained legally enslaved in the border states. It wasn't until more than 5 months later, on December 6, 1865, that the 13th Amendment was finally ratified. This formally ended chattel slavery in the U.S. Because official emancipation was a staggered process, people in different places commemorated it on different dates. Those in Galveston, Texas, began celebrating Juneteenth, a combination of June and 19th, on the very first anniversary of General Granger's announcement. Over time, smaller Juneteenth gatherings gave way to large parades, and the tradition eventually became the most widespread of emancipation celebrations. But while chattel slavery had officially ended, racial inequality, oppression, and terror had not. Celebrating emancipation was itself an act of continued resistance, and it wasn't until 2021 that Juneteenth became a federal holiday. Today, Juneteenth holds profound significance as a celebration of the demise of slavery, the righteous pursuit of true freedom for all, and a continued pledge to remember the past and dream the future. People resisted slavery in the U.S. as long as it persisted, uncovered the story of those who escaped slavery, and created
Pause. There we go.
Yeah, we're done. So,
We're
yeah,
done.
yeah. But just to give you people, I saw a couple of you who said, like Angel said, you don't know anything about Juneteenth. Well, that's why we wanted to do this, is to kind of teach. I didn't want to assume that people knew the significance of Juneteenth, but so that's why I felt it was important to kind of mention it. Again, we talked about it at length last year. But just kind of give a quick overview of the significance of the holiday. And as you heard, it was a state holiday in certain states, not everywhere, until 2021, when it became very like, I remember that day. It was, I remember that day actually, because like I remember, because that was when we were virtual, doing virtual school at that time. So like I remember my principal at that time basically announcing, yeah, you actually have a day off tomorrow because you had, like, the next day was a federal holiday. I was just kind of like, wait, what? Like, I mean, given like a day off of work, but yeah, it was kind of weird that it just all of a sudden that we had this random day off. It became a federal holiday. So, but we're actually going to talk a little bit more about that later. But yeah, so last year when we talked about Juneteenth, we read Margaret Kimberly's article on it, and she wrote, I wouldn't say scathing, but she wrote it like in a way that how the holiday now has become somewhat problematic. And she reposted that article again on Twitter earlier today. But she added in her tweet, Juneteenth was a people's holiday with deep meaning for the descendants of enslaved people. But the declaration of an official federal holiday has turned it into an opportunity for corporate exploiters and cynical politicians to show pretend concern. So we're not going to read the whole article. We have no need to. We read it last year. But I do want to show part of what she was talking about in that article. So this is why I'm kind of glad we have like a treasure trove now of of things that we wanted to talk about because now we can reference ourselves now.
Right.
A friend to the show, JB, said yesterday, tomorrow is Juneteenth. Here comes the corporations co-opting our liberation to make a profit, and the politicians will do nothing for us to make that liberation tangible for us.
Mm.
Oh,
I think
wait.
it worked out. We're back. I think we're good. So,
Okay.
yeah. Let us know. Let us know in the chat. Make sure. I think
Okay.
Indy said we're fine.
Yeah.
We're up on other platforms anyway, so in case YouTube takes us down, you can find us on Rumble, on Twitter, and many other places. And go in that doobly-doo below, find in our Linktree and go in there.
Okay. Yeah, that was a little weird. But anyway, so we're going to look at a little snippet of the article that I read last year regarding Juneteenth, thanks to Margaret Kimberly. Oops. No. So let's see what she said or what she wrote about.
Yep.
Yeah. The Civil War is rarely taught properly. The well-documented struggle for liberation is left out of the story. The enslaved people who fled to Union lines whenever they were forced Lincoln to state that ending slavery was the object of the conflict. He only reluctantly agreed to establish the United States colored troops, who were more invested in victory than any group in the country. Of course, he never gave up on his dream of an all-white country. Shortly before his assassination, he still expressed a desire to send Black people away and to compensate the Confederacy for its lost free labor. Instead of pointing out these well-documented facts, Juneteenth is an amorphous celebration of Black people. The best it can accomplish is to point out that freedom itself is never amorphous in this country. Enslavement was soon followed by lynch law terrorism, the sharecropping system, and the conflict leasing system. Mass Black incarceration at the end of the 20th century brought about a new system of free labor, as vicious as that in the Jim Crow South. The general order itself shows the illusionary nature of freedom for Black people. It warned the newly freed not to collect at military posts and not to be idle. Of course, they were forced to work hard for nothing. An allowance for temporary idleness should have been permitted, but this directive is yet another reason for serious discussion and study.
Okay.
Okay. So, actually, that wasn't all I wanted to play, but that's fine. That it was, I cut it off a little short, but that's okay. But yeah, so in of itself, as Margaret and JB mentioned, it's now become, and you mentioned this yesterday when we were prepping, it's now become another capitalistic holiday to kind of celebrate. And, you know, often it's become a holiday now where kind of like Black History Month, it's become a time when, you know, people push, you know, Black-owned businesses, you know, like Black
capitalism.
products.
Yeah.
So in a way,
it
sure.
reminds me of pride stuff too now, right? Where it's like every corporation has to have rainbow flags on it, even if that's Raytheon and Boeing, and you know, like it's just corporate whitewashing to me, where it's like they get to appear as like allies, even though they were most likely part of the problem, if not the problem, even back then.
Right.
So,
you
know, like how much cotton you think the Hanes company used, or you know what I mean? Like, I don't know when they started, but I'm betting that cotton was picked by some people. So, some point.
And really, the issue with Juneteenth, and this is a part that I didn't clip out properly, but Margaret basically made the case that this should be the idea of Juneteenth should lead to discussion in terms of how to make the progression for Black people to truly be liberated. Because again, if you remember from the TED Talk video, when they were freed, essentially the idea was that they were promised 4 acres and a mule, right?
Right.
This is the idea of where reparations now for Black people, Black descendants of slaves, has now come about because they weren't offered that. So they were freed, but freed to what? They weren't
Right.
able to basically do anything. They had no capital to justify them, leaving plantations for many of them. So
Yeah.
many of them became
Became
sharecroppers,
indentured.
which
Yeah.
essentially, or dentured. So basically, they were renting land
Right.
from their former slave owners in the hope that they can own it, and that wasn't always necessarily the case, particularly in the South.
Yep.
But then, so JB once again brought up another good point, and that's why I said, remember a certain part in the video where he highlighted the 13th Amendment, where it says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except as a punishment for crime. So slavery has not been completely abolished.
No.
At all.
Right to jail, right away.
And I believe you've done a couple of segments where essentially the prison system is essentially become a form of slavery. I think, was that prison in
Angola
Louisiana that you talked?
It is still a plantation.
Right.
Like, they still pick cotton, among many a crop. Like, it is essentially a farm with a prison on it. So shout out my boys in Angola, doing the work out there. But this is a place where the one that always got me was they essentially just left people to die during Katrina. They just locked the keys and left, with prisoners inside, which is just fucking wild to me. But, 13th Amendment still, you throw them in prison, they can be slaves, pretty much.
Right.
That's...
And even, you're talking about post-Civil War, like Reconstruction era. Like, you had, Jim Crow, you had sharecropping, you had redlining, you had segregation. Like, you still had a lot of these systems in place within the country. It wasn't necessarily full-blown slavery, but it still wasn't true liberation that Black people were, essentially were fighting for, and still are.
Right.
So I wanted to play this. I think I was laughing last night. You were probably wondering what I was laughing about. This is why. So I found this on TikTok. So Vivek Ramaswamy was asked about Juneteenth, and I thought he gave a very interesting response. Like, obviously, with all the political baggage, kind of what he says here, but he does say something interesting that I've said to you, and I think just generally regarding Juneteenth in the past.
Right.
So let's see what he says regarding Juneteenth.
You think Juneteenth is a useless holiday?
I basically do. Yeah.
Do you think Memorial Day, Veterans Day are useless holidays?
I don't, because I stand with the presumption of time-tested traditions. Like I said, religion is, I call these things cults. I won't dignify them as religions because religions have withstood the test of time. And so I think that if we made a national commemorative holiday for everything that's important and happened in our history, we'd have no working days left. But I think the spirit of Juneteenth, we already channel into other holidays, like Martin Luther King Day, like President's Day. I think we can commemorate the spirit of that holiday separately. So I think that we shouldn't have redundant holidays that celebrate overlapping purposes. It should have a distinct purpose. And I think, let's be honest, the reason for making that a holiday was under political duress. It was a political hostage situation on the back of the death of George Floyd. And I think that should not be how we create holidays. We should not create holidays with a cultural gun to our head. And that's what happened with Juneteenth.
Well, it's funny, Vivek, you mentioned... Well, it's funny, Vivek, because you didn't mention what the spirit of Juneteenth is. So that would have been nice for you to even mention that. And maybe You know,
You think June?
but he didn't talk about the idea of slavery or Black liberation or any of that. But that being said, he's not wrong, and I've said this before, and so you can go back to that.
Yeah.
So we have another TikToker. I forgot her name at the moment. A
Bohemian
Bohemian
Diva,
Diva
99.
99. Very short, but she, I think, nails the idea of this capitalist view of Juneteenth, of why it is. I think she says it perfectly in a short TikTok. So go ahead, you can play what she says. Oh, I can't hear.
Oh, there you go.
This is just a friendly reminder that the only reason why Juneteenth is even a federally recognized holiday was used as a tool to gaslit the Black community instead of passing a federal police reform bill after the public murder of George Floyd that turned into a viral snuff film. You're welcome.
Interesting. Vivek doesn't mention that when he was talking about it.
Right.
He's just like, it was a cultural gun to our head. Yeah, and what should you have done with that cultural gun to your head? You know?
Actually give concessions to Black people regarding what was
Tangible
happening in George
tangible
Floyd,
change.
or if you want, or on a macro level, talk about the issues regarding Black people that have been an issue, that have long been an issue in this country, that maybe there could be steps towards actual liberation for Black people. But you notice even he wasn't even going to talk about that or mention that. And yeah, you can argue he's a Republican. He's not going to mention that anyway, but
no,
you will think Democrats are not going to mention that. Well, at least the establishment ones are not going to mention that either. So you can say across the board that the idea of Juneteenth, the symbolism of Juneteenth, or the purpose of it, is essentially lost now in public discourse now. And the kind of what I meant, like we joked earlier, like that I should have the day off. You know, like try having all Black people take the day off today.
Yeah.
And see what happens. Like, never gonna happen.
No.
Because just, you know, given the capital that we would, you can argue for everybody, but you can argue the capital that we would bring or lose to the establishment would be huge. So they're not going to give us a day off collectively for Black people to take the day off, because I remember, shout out to Indy, mentioned this to me a couple of years ago. He was like, you know what? As a Jewish guy, I could take off, or can, for a Jewish holiday. Now, you can argue that if you're in the private sector, you might be able to do that. Not everyone has that privilege. But like, in general, if you need to take off for something, whether it's like a religious holiday or a cultural holiday, you generally can. But now it's like people have off, non-Black people have off for Juneteenth over a holiday that I wouldn't say it's not significant to them, but at the same time, you know, again, people are not going to know the significance of the holiday, and especially them to actually kind of think about the implications of why it exists in the first place and what that means potentially for Black people.
Right.
So, you know, like, as I said, there's going to be plenty of Black workers at, you know, my local Target, or like my local Trader Joe's where I was at earlier today,
Trader Joe,
where they were working. So, you know, so I don't think they're necessarily feeling the idea of like, oh, I feel free today, I feel like spiritual today. No, I have to work.
Right.
So, so last slide for this. So this was in response to JB's tweet. At Godless Commie commented, the white man will try to satisfy us with symbolic victories rather than economic equity and real justice. Sincerely, Malcolm X. So I think, you know, I think that's a good way to kind of end this segment. But the idea, the idea that Juneteenth becoming a federal holiday, I do believe is true. It happened a year after the George Floyd protests. And I feel that, again, it was a means to kind of appease people to actually feel like, here, like, we actually gave you a crumb. You get this day off, some of you, but no talk regarding justice among the police, no talk about like reparations for Black people, no talk about like how like racism has subjected us to a lot of cultural and physical issues in this country. Like, there's none of that discussion. It's just the idea of like, here's a day off for y'all. And even with that, I kind of noticed, like, you would think that Republicans had something to say about it. From what I remember, there was no pushback against this at all.
Not
So
then.
that's just kind of shows. So this kind of shows me that this was like the overlords basically said, we'll go along with this and you better go along with this. To me,
Yeah.
it's kind of like the same issue that
Well, it
I
was-
remember for like
I think
Pride.
they
like,
talked about it, where it was like, it's symbolic gesture needs to happen right now, or they're gonna come for us.
Right.
And like,
So
everyone shut the fuck up and signed the check and, went with
and go along with it.
So,
Yeah, it's something similar to Pride, the moment when gay marriage became legal in this
Yeah.
country. Like it like granted, like, like right wingers still talk about it, but like they're not talking about it in the fervency of it being like of the devil that it
Right.
used to be prior to 2012. So, but the moment that happened, and I think I said this to you, I think within it happened 2012. 2014 was when when I graduated grad school. That's when I remember seeing stuff in the stores for Pride. I'd never
Yep.
seen stuff for Pride prior to that. But then all of a sudden, like, Target was selling stuff. Like, every major corporation stuff was starting selling stuff for Pride. And you see the same thing with Juneteenth. Like, the moment it became a federal holiday, now you have Juneteenth sales. Now there's this push of ice cream and like all this other bullshit, but not where there's something tangible for Black people in terms of the liberation that Black people have fought for centuries here. So, yeah, so that's my rant. And like I said, if you want to read Margaret Kimberly's article in full, is good. You can definitely, I think the clip is called "The Problem with Juneteenth."
Yep.
You can find it on our playlist on the channel. But otherwise, if you enjoyed this segment, or if you want me to do more rants like this, you can scan the QR code or go to that link that you see at the bottom of your screen, or you can type in ! Donate. We'll pull up a link for you in the chat if you want to donate. And as we keep saying, please like, share, and subscribe. We are suppressed as hell. Please make sure to leave a comment. We do read them, especially now where we can read them and respond to them. And help us get to 2K. We're 6 people away. 6.
Yeah.
6 people away to get to 2K. So
do it.
Help us reach that milestone. And yeah, thank you so much. And
There's a clap for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, any Rockfin? Oh, how is Rockfin and
I don't know if
Rumble doing?
I don't know if Rockfin's. I think Rockfin's sick and needs some soup. Someone will check for me, but no one is there right now. No one's on Rumble. Well, it says people are on Rumble. If you're on Rumble, leave us a little live chat. Let us know you're not a lizard person, and do some typey types. Leave us a message. But all right, you ready for your next one?
Yeah, I forgot I was doing right after this.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah. So last week we talked about how Israel's latest raid resulted in the rescue of 4 hostages at the cost of over 270 Palestinians who were killed. And since then, I saw on Twitter and other channels of the idea that the U.S. military was involved in that attack. Well, we have, I will say, confirmation from Robert Inlakesh.
Inlakesh.
There we go.
That guy.
Yeah.
Inlakesh.
So he wrote an investigative piece in Minpress that Consortium News picked up.
Yep.
Where he writes, U.S. involved in Israeli massacre of 274 Palestinians. Robert Inlakesh goes over press evidence countering U.S. government denials that its forces were directly involved in Israel's deadly operation in Gaza's Nuseirat refugee camp. So catch up. So he continues. Officials in Washington praised Israel's military operation that freed 4 Israeli captives from the Gaza Strip, but refrained from commenting on the approximately 274 Palestinians killed during the mission, which involved U.S. collaboration. While Israelis celebrated the extraction of the captives from Gaza's Nuseirat, Palestinian refugees in the area were left to collect the remains of their loved ones. An eyewitness described seeing mangled bodies of men, women, and children strewn around the marketplace and a mosque, while a paramedic likened the scene to a horror movie. A headline in the Washington Post read, "For Israel, a rare day of joy amid bloodshed as 4 hostages are rescued alive," referring to the event that resulted in the deaths of 274 Palestinians and hundreds of others wounded. Meanwhile, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan praised the operation as daring, and President Joe Biden expressed his joy over the rescue without addressing what was one of the largest civilian massacres in Gaza since October.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Thanks, Indy. During the Israeli military operation, which successfully extracted 4 captives, 3 others were reportedly killed, including a U.S. citizen, according to a statement from Hamas. Shortly after, information surfaced that the U.S. had played a significant role in the operation, which was hailed as a great success. A New York Times article reported that a team of American hostage recovery officials stationed in Israel assisted the Israeli military's effort to rescue the 4 captives by providing intelligence and other logistical support. Another report from Axios cited an unnamed U.S. official claiming that a U.S. hostage cell in Israel supported the effort to rescue the 4 hostages, but he did not provide details on the support provided. Compounding issues for the American government, a video seemingly filmed by Israeli soldiers was widely shared on social media, showing a helicopter taking off next to the U.S.-built temporary pier meant to facilitate the transfer of much-needed aid to Gaza. The aircraft was used in Israel's military operation to transport the 4 freed captives. Sorry. Slaves.
Yep.
Sorry. Captives.
Stuck on Juneteenth talk.
I'm stuck on Juneteenth, yeah. But anyways, U.S. Central Command CENTCOM quickly released a statement on the issue claiming the humanitarian pier facility, including its equipment, personnel, and assets, was not used in the operation to rescue hostages today in Gaza. An area south of the facility was used by the Israelis to safely return the hostages to Israel. Any such claim to the contrary is false. However, contrary... What's that?
I was just, is it? Press X for doubt.
However, contrary to the spirit of CENTCOM's statement, the video of the helicopter used to evacuate the Israeli captives show it clearly next to the pier. The vehicles used to transfer the 4 released detainees likely used a nearby causeway attached to the pier. Following further denial from the U.S. government that its forces were directly involved, the Pentagon released a statement describing the area used by the helicopter as near the pier.
Yeah, this like 50 feet away.
This contradicts reports from the New York Times, Axios, and CBS, which cited American officials claiming that U.S. and UK intelligence information was used by Israel to conduct the military operation.
Yep.
Additional supports indicate that U.S.-operated drones were used for surveillance to support the operation. While there are no allegations that U.S. forces were on the ground or participated in armed action, they were clearly involved in other ways. Well, I have something that might probably more likely defutes that.
Okay.
Despite Washington's insistence on innocence, the UN World Food Program remained unconvinced that the close proximity of the Israeli-operated aircraft did not imply the pier's use in the military operation. WFP Executive Director Cindy McCain announced the organization had paused its planned distribution of aid from the pier due to security concerns from its staff. This decision came after 2 of its sites were attacked during the Nusrat massacre. The U.S.-built temporary pier was initially estimated to cost American taxpayers $320 million. Contributions from the United Kingdom and lower rates for contractors allegedly reduced that figure to $230 million. However, the pier suffered damage after U.S. forces failed to account for sea conditions, adding another $22 million in damages to the bill.
Okay.
The U.S. only managed to reconnect the floating pier to Gaza on June 7th, less than a day before the Israeli military operation. This has sparked speculation about the true intent of the pier, as it's only operable in conditions with waves smaller than 1.25 meters and has delivered minimal aid for such a costly project. So we've actually talked about this before in terms of, like how this pier was built and kind of shoddy at that, and what its real intentions were. I think given the size of the pier and all that, and now I guess the pier has essentially sunk.
Well, it did, and then they rebuilt the floating pier. They shoved a floating pier up to the same spot,
right,
literally days before this operation. So one that can only be operated in waves less than, a meter, pretty much. Like,
right,
which is not that much. That's
and given the size, that doesn't indicate aid, that will be able to kind of come in on the current pier that's there now. So the question is, what is that pier really for? So speaking of defeating the U.S. claims, fortunately, I had this saved for maybe about a week or two. So Jeremy Lafredo tweeted, "A young boy from al-Nusrat explains that the soldiers who raided his family home, extinguished a cigar on his neck, and killed his 12-year-old brother were not Israeli military. They were American special." This is the child. "They were American special forces. Those who attacked us in our home were not Israeli forces. They were American. And Biden, the guy who talks about humanitarian aid and who built the pier, is bringing tanks through the pier. And the person who killed my brother is one of them from Biden's army." So obviously he's Palestinian. So, but you can play the video there underneath. There are subtitles, so you may want to zoom out. The days, let's start over because I have to read it. The day started normally until around 10 in the morning. Then the helicopters came. Maybe 6 or 7 of them. They started firing everywhere around Nusrat. After the firing, we found a truck that had parked by our house door. We saw a group of special forces, American special forces. We stayed in the house, we sat in our room, and then we heard the sound of approaching tanks. Did they talk to you, the soldiers? What happened? We saw them from afar. After getting in the house, we heard the sounds of tanks. We said, "God save us." Then we heard their voices coming up the stairs. They broke everything on the bottom floor and then got up to the second floor. First thing they did when they entered was to shoot at us. They shot my brother Moim here and in his belly near the kidney. I saw him. Then he shot me in the finger, and God saved me because the bullet ricocheted towards my aunt. After the bullet hit my finger, it got my aunt. After that, he shot my younger brother and he died. God rest his soul. Yemen. He was 12. He bled for about a quarter of an hour on the mattress. Afterwards, he took my grandfather and Rav and father. They blindfolded them, and then he wanted to kill me, but my mom told them I'm young. To check that I'm young, he undressed me. Once he checked, he took me to the living room. In the living room, he punched me twice here in the face, and then he laid me down and blindfolded me. After he blindfolded me, he told me to put my hands on my back. I put my hands back, but tried to resist when they, so he put his shoe there. Oh, so yeah.
And press
so
down.
he put his shoe there and pressed down, so I quiet down. So I stopped making noises. Those who attacked us in the house were not Israeli forces. They were American forces. And Biden, the guy who talks about humanitarian aid and who built the pier, is bringing tax through the pier. And the person who killed us, killed my brother and shot my other brother, was American from Biden's army. One of them put out their cigarettes here on his neck. He was smoking on the sofa while I was tied and then put it out there. That's what happened. My name is Ahmad Mohammed Kabul Matar.
Matar, yep. Cool. Dude, what? Like, first of all, the way he talks about both his aunt and brother dying with, like, zero emotion, you know?
Yeah.
Like, just shows how, like, hardened these people are to tragedy at this point, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, to just, first they undressed him to see if he was young. What the fuck? Huh?
Right.
Like.
Right.
What's up with that? What's up with that?
The fuck's up with that? That's weird as shit. Don't be doing that. Like. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I you can figure out for yourself what they meant by that. But
yeah.
It just, honestly, I hate saying this, but it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
For Ahmed. You know, like, I'm not going to say here because YouTube, but you can fill in the gaps as to what they could have done with him if they wanted to.
Yeah.
But didn't, thank God. But, and I thought about this. This is probably, and we can only speculate, but this is what I believe Aaron Bushnell,
yeah,
the person, like we talked about him, who, you know, self-immolated himself back in February. This was probably the stuff that he probably knew was going to happen.
Yeah.
That he had wanted no part of it. And that's why he took that extreme act of protest against that. Because basically when you're in the military, you cannot speak out against injustices like these. Like, so it was his way of probably kind of, I would argue, his protest, but in a way warning people in terms of, we are going to get involved. Watch. And given, and like, I'm going to take the account of this little boy to heart, you know, because this is all that pretty much we're getting right now in terms of, you know, U.S. troops being there. And we talked about, you know, last week how there are British Israeli troops who are fighting in Israel right now. So it makes sense to me if, you know, the British Israelis are fighting in the IDF. Why to say that American troops would not be fighting there as well?
Well, the issue is we already know that American mercenaries are over there, just like British mercenaries are over there. The issue is if
right.
active American military are there. under orders.
Well, but in terms of using the pier, which again would be essentially a war crime. So, so again, it's like, so of course America is gonna keep quiet about this because they don't want that smoke. So, but again, the fact that, which is why mainstream media is not going to touch this. I did see some, I don't want to give him credit, but I believe Kyle Kalinske did report on this maybe a week or two ago. But, the idea that even with this story, it hasn't gotten any sort of traction at all. We can guess why, but given that America is kind of put on blast already, you would think that there would be more noise about it, and there hasn't been.
No, well, they're taking the Shaggy approach, so
wasn't me, right?
But yeah, even though we definitely caught them on camera.
She even got me on camera.
Anyway.
But yeah, I mean, it's such disappointing story and a horrific story. I hated kind of talking about that, but that being said, that's why we're demonetized, because we talk stories like this that other people probably will not. So please support us, since YouTube is not helping us, but we don't rely on them. We rely on you, faithful viewers, and our fam to support the channel. So if you want to give us some support financially, feel free to scan the QR code with your phone or go to that link that you see on the bottom of your screen to support us on Ko-fi. If you want to give financially, but more importantly, please like, share, and subscribe. We are heavily suppressed on YouTube. Although I still don't understand why certain clips of ours do well and most do not, but whatever.
Yeah.
And make sure you leave a comment on this stream or any of our clips that we put up. We do read them, and often we do get some ideas in terms of what we should talk about from your comments. So continue doing that. That definitely helps us get ideas of stories to cover and help us get to 2K. We are currently 6 people away from hitting that goal. We've been like hovering around 2K for a minute. So please get us over the edge where we're able to get 2K or surpass that. Maybe tonight?
So please whatever.
Yeah. So please subscribe and help us get that goal. We've been hovering around this 1,000 for like a minute. Like our first 1,000 took a lot shorter time than this 1,000.
Yeah.
But
well, I guess we should get to chat.
Yes.
Mastermind Hour Reef is never afraid to lay down a Shaggy sound drop. Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you? They're talking about that it's hurricane season coming up. Yep. That is
not coming up. It is
technically, yeah. Nice warm water out in the Gulf should stir up some storms. I think Texas is getting hit, right?
Yeah. Well, there's a tropical storm like in the Gulf right now, right?
Yeah.
Like people who live in the Gulf area, in the Gulf states.
Rick Solis. Greetings from the tropical storm down here in Texas. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Cynic hurricane season is upon us. All that fun stuff.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Gulf Coast, everyone.
This is going to affect you probably by the weekend, I guess. As far as rain.
Some bans. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So,
but you haven't seen anything yet, right?
No, not yet. So I'd have to look at the actual radar. It might be missing me, hopefully. So normally I'd already, if I had to worry about it, me be doing stuff, but it might affect shows coming up, so we'll see about that. But, just in general, hurricane season, you never know. But, if you're on Rumble, leave us a little chat. Leave us a little chat message. There's 6 of you. One of you can get in there and chat. I promise. It won't bite. I still don't know if Rockfin is working. I'm gonna leave those links in the chat for people, and just tell me if you can see stuff on there. So, but yeah, Cynic's not too far from me, and if she's, we like, if she misses it, I misses it, hopefully. So, I think the only other one was like Michael hit her pretty hard, and I got the better side of that storm, so, but my house is fine. Nice little concrete block tank. It'll be alright. So, worst we'll get is water in here. That's about it. Where is Rockfin? I had it. Is that it? No, that's Rumble. Go to Rockfin, copy the thing, share, copy. Copy. Let's try that. There you go. Tell me if Rockfin's working in there. So, seeing said, Michael handed her a pretty fucking bad one. So, that one fucked people up over there in Panama City. So, like, that thing got owned. I ran through there after that storm. It was pretty bad. So, yeah. But, anyway, so, we're gonna talk about oil companies, to be specific. So, everyone's favorite oil conglomerate, Shell, is leaving Africa, Collin. You would think that's a good thing, right? I would hope.
Yeah, but I'm sure there's a catch to this.
There might be one.
I haven't read the story yet, but especially from Nigeria, given that they have a huge oil conglomerate in Nigeria. That's what they're known for, among other things, as far as natural resources. So this should be interesting as to why Shell is leaving.
So, Shell exits from Nigeria. Environmental campaigners say the oil giant should not be allowed to escape culpability for the environmental and societal damage it is called in the Niger Delta. So,
that's why. The fuckers.
Yeah. This is by Andy Rawell and James Marriott from Open Democracy Consortium News, picking this up, as they do. So, Nigerian activists...
You don't need to read this article. You
already know.
Said why.
Yeah, Nigerian activists believe Shell's apparent end to its 87-year operation in the country is an effort to avoid its legal responsibilities while holding on to potential profitable side of the business. In January,
East Palestine, anyone.
Yeah, exactly. In January,
like giving those vibes. Oh, we don't want to have anything to do with the destruction that we cause, but we still want the money.
Money, please.
Money, please.
In January, the oil giant revealed it has reached an agreement to sell its Nigerian offshore subsidiary to Renaissance, a consortium of 4 Nigerian oil firms and one based in Switzerland. But despite the $2.8 billion deal, Shell will effectively still own part of the business and will continue to bankroll Renaissance's onshore exploration in Nigeria going forward. So did they really leave, Collin?
No.
Did they? Right. This is monopolies trying to demonopolize while continuing to monopolize. That's classic, like, oil company. This is like Rockefeller tactic. So the company's press statement confirmed it will loan the new buyers up to $1.2 billion to help them buy their stake in the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited. It will also provide Renaissance with financing of up to $1.3 billion over future years. This will fund its share-specific decommissioning and restoration costs and part of the development of gas resources for NLNG, a company producing natural gas in Nigeria to export to global markets, in which Shell will retain a 25.6% interest. Renaissance, meanwhile, will take over responsibilities for dealing with spills, theft, and sabotage, as well as Shell's ongoing contributions to the remediation of past environmental damage. That's the kicker, right? So they're kicking this over to Renaissance, like, here, you Nigerians deal with the mess, right?
And
we'll even let the
they
Swiss
don't-
help out.
Right, and they do not. I'm of Nigerian descent. I haven't been to Nigeria. I do know West Africa well enough that they do not have the necessary resources to handle this. They see the money involved, and they're going to be like, yes, please, but not necessarily think of the implications of them taking this money. This will also, I would imagine, this will also make them, this will kind of make, this makes them the fall guys, essentially, for the mass that
Marika,
Shell themselves created.
Marika Voss in the
So-
chat saying it's a Shell game. I see what you did there, Marika. Appreciate it. So campaigners have told Open Democracy that Shell should not be allowed to escape culpability for the environmental and societal damage it has caused in Nigeria. Next. Celeste Akpabari, a long-term environmental activist with Nigeria's Ogoni region, said, Shell has to restore our environment and lost livelihoods before selling anything.
Yes.
Our environment should be restored to the level Shell met it.
Yes.
You're not Ryan, Celestine. You're not lying. Akpapari believes the millions of oil barrels split in the Niger Delta over almost 9 decades have significantly worsened his community's finances. There was more than 10,000 oil spills between 2011 and 2022 alone, according to the National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency. Our people enjoy their fishing and farming businesses, but can't do that anymore, Akpabari said. In a situation where there's a complete absence of government, as we presently have in Nigeria, it is monies we get from our fishing and farming businesses that we use in sending our children to school, provide health care, and pay other bills. Now we can't even do that, and we watch our children and dependents die of hunger and sickness because of poverty. Civil society and community opposition to Shell has been widespread in Nigeria since the early 1990s. Many have been angered by the pollution the company has emitted in the country, as well as its burning of natural gas, a practice associated with oil extraction that can save in energy for money, but is associated with serious health complications for those living nearby. So that's what they're talking about, these little gas flares, right? Remember how we talked about how oil, if we're pulling oil, there is also natural gas present, right?
Right.
Because, like a little layered cocktail, right? Your little B-52, that's how it's working. Little density problem. So they're burning that natural gas instead of collecting it, right? Because it's cheaper to do so. They just want the Earl. So public discontent only grew at the executives of the Ogoni 9, a group of activists who opposed Shell's operations. Public discontent only grew at the executions of the Ogoni 9, a group of activists who opposed Shell's operations in the Niger Delta and alleged exploitation of the Ogoni people. The activists were sentenced to death at a trial by Nigeria's military in 1995, having been accused of inciting the murders of 4 Ogoni chiefs who disagreed with the strategy of their organization, the Movement for the Survival of the Ogoni People. Shell had a watching brief at the trial, which was widely discredited even at the time when the UK Prime Minister John Major described it as fraudulent. When a UK Prime Minister is calling you fraudulent, something's up. Several key witnesses have since claimed Shell actors and government officials bribed them with offers of money, a house, and jobs at the oil company to say the activists hadn't been involved in the murders. The oil giant has always denied these accusations, as well as it claims it colluded with the Nigerian military on the trial. In the decades since, Ogoni communities have sought justice and tried to hold the oil giant accountable for the role they believe it played in the activists' deaths. We're going to get to a story of another corporation and their possible murders and what might be happening there in another segment. Stay tuned for that, but, hopefully we can make that happen here. It might be nice. So Extinction Rebellion have a banner, right? Shell to hell, Ogoni people not forgotten. Right there. There you go. You see it. I like that little logo. Very good. Very good graphic work. So Shell, meanwhile, had tried to distance itself from Nigerian subsidiary with a public relations response driven not by staff in Lagos or Port Harcourt, but by its London head office, which suggested there was a problem with one local branch in Africa, but not a larger issue, a practice began even before the trial. In a 1993 letter, Shell said it did not operate using a top-down management approach. Each operating company not only has its own legal identity, but also responsible for its own day-to-day operation. Nigerian political scientist Claude Aki believes Shell has always responded to the backlash against its operations in Nigeria with a focus on damage limitation rather than sincerity. This alleged strategy of reputation protection is seemingly present in the oil giant's court cases. Back in 2009, Shell agreed to pay $15.5 million to the family of Ken Saro-Wiwa, the president of the Movement for the Survival of the Ogoni People, who was one of the Ogoni Nine. In doing so, the company walked away from the case, denying liability. Before settling, Shell had made... Go ahead.
Finish that sentence.
Before settling, Shell had made repeated attempts to get the case thrown out.
So they settled out of court.
Yeah. Essentially. To the tune of $15 million.
Which I would argue...
For a member
cheap.
of the Ogoni is something. For them, nothing. Like, you know...
Well, given what they said regarding the implications of their oil drilling has caused within the community, like, that's pennies, really.
Yep. Yes, it is. So, other court cases have been brought against Shell over the deaths of the Ogoni Nine, so far without success. But other group of activists won an unrelated battle with the company in the Netherlands in May 2021, in which Shell was found liable for causing dangerous climate change worldwide and ordered by the District Court of The Hague to reduce its CO2 emissions by 45% within 10 years. The historic verdict, which could pave the way for more prosecutions of Shell and other big international polluters, was brought by Friends of the Earth Netherlands and 6 other organizations and 17,000 co-plaintiffs. Big class actions. I'm going to butcher this name, I'm sure. Milud Finzi sent a letter to Shell's board of directors in April 2022 calling for urgent action to comply with the 2021 verdict. The NGO warned about personal liability risks resulting from a failure to act. In July of that year, Shell appealed the decision. Shell's Nigerian operations have also been the subject of lawsuits in the UK. The company agreed to pay $55 million to settle a case brought by 15,600 members of the Bodo community after a massive oil spill in the area in 2014. Liable, the British law firm that represented the community, told Open Democracy that Shell had been at some fault, but disputed the amount of oil spilt. Okay. And last November, London's High Court ruled that 13,000 farmers and fishers from the Agali and Belay communities can sue Shell over chronic pollution of their water sources and destruction of their way of life. A report in The Guardian at the time said Shell denied directly owning the claimants, though it said its Nigerian subsidy, the SPDC, has accepted responsibility for the spills it caused and compensated affected parties where required. So they're literally passing the buck to the Nigerian subsidiary, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So...
But I hate this because this is kind of like the thing that I hate that Africans are kind of known for, but in the stereotypical way, but like the corruption. Like, give them a little money and they'll do basically anything. And really, literally a little money. Like, if you're going to sell out, like, make it count in my mind.
Right.
But it's like, this is essentially like a pair of socks.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, I'm not being literal. I'm just kind of, but, sell out for, like, make them pay for it. Literally make them pay for it if you're going to sell out that way. You know, and often they don't. So yeah, go
So,
ahead.
Lede, which is also representing the Ogale and Belay communities, issued a statement after Shell announced the SBDC's sale to Renaissance, saying its clients are concerned about how the proposed sale could affect their claim. The law firm has since told Open Democracy that the details of the sale still remain unclear. In its statement, Lede added it would be unconscionable for Shell to pack up its offshore operations in Nigeria without cleaning up its mess and paying compensation. We consider that Shell, having made billions of pounds over decades from extracting oil resources from Nigeria, should fulfill its legal responsibilities and not leave behind an environmental catastrophe as it seeks to exit the Niger Delta. Renaissance, which is based in Nigeria, will likely be immune from lawsuits in the Netherlands or the UK, one reason why activists and civil society organizations have called on the Nigerian government to stop the sale. Last month,
If
Go ahead.
anything, they should go along with the lawsuit.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. So last month,
if they're not going to be affected by it, then they should really fight against it.
Yeah.
Alongside these activists.
Yeah. So I'm sure they're getting some kickbacks though that they are very happy to receive.
I'm sure.
Last month, international Nigerian NGOs, including Amnesty International, Environmental Rights Action Friends of the Earth Nigeria, wrote to the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission urging it to refuse regulatory approval for the sale. The letter added, Shell should not be permitted to use legal gymnastics to escape its responsibilities for cleaning up its widespread legacy of pollution. The sale should not be permitted unless local communities have been fully consulted, the environmental pollution caused to date by SBDC has been fully assessed, and funds have been placed by SBDC in escrow sufficient to guarantee that cleanup costs will be covered. So they're essentially saying, leave them a check, you got to pay for it. That's what they're asking. So Shell did not answer Open Democracy's questions, with a spokesperson instead directing us to a press release and FAQ section about the sale on its website. Cindy Baxter, who has campaigned against the oil industry for decades, told Open Democracy, nearly 30 years after Kinsarawiwa and 8 others were hung for protesting Shell's pollution, the Ogoni people are still fighting it in the courts. Before this corporation leaves the country, it must clean up and pay for its environmental crimes. So, any questions, Care Bear?
No, I don't have a question. It's just kind of sick. I mean, you read the subheading and I immediately knew what this is going to be about.
Yep.
You know, but again, it's just so disappointing. This is one of the things that I hate about Africa, and I love the continent. You know, I love the people there. Everyone knows this, but they just play themselves to the Western fiddle every single time. Anything out of poverty, really. It's just we want money, or so if they're willing to get it, then they're going to take it. And to the detriment on themselves, and it's often, most of the time, it's not even for the benefit of the communities that they serve, it's the benefit of themselves. So that's what really gets me. It's that it'd be one thing if they took the money to actually enhance the livelihoods of the people around them. More often than not, it's not that. So it sucks that, again, this is a kind of stereotype of Africans, especially in the West, that people view them as, but it makes sense. But at the same time, it's have some fucking backbone, people. You've seen how, you've seen how the West has basically fucked you over and your families and your communities, and you're willing to accept payment because for what? You benefit monetarily just from the very thing that is essentially destroying your people. That makes no sense to me. There's certain things in life that you shouldn't be willing to sell yourself in order to do or receive. And I think this is one of those things. But like I said, if they're going to be immune for any situations in court which would implicate them in any of this, I don't see why Renaissance does not again have a backbone and be like, no, we'll try you at court too. Like given, especially since they essentially got bribed to clean up the mess. You make the argument that would be more of enough to, counter Shell. But it kind of reminds me though of in thinking in terms of, I've mentioned my teachers union before, my local union, not the federal one that we often complain about, but in terms of not necessarily having the resources or like again the fortitude, but mostly the resources where if Shell went against them. And my guess is that might be a part of why Renaissance has been willing, because I'm sure there's some corruption on their part that Shell might know, that they're like, if you go against us, then we will essentially expose you too. That's kind of also what I'm thinking about, is why they're willing just to kind of go along with it and take the money without trying them in court. That's just right now I'm thinking of that. So I'm kind of have to wonder what is Renaissance also complicit in, if anything, that they will not stand up against Shell to go along with this court case as well. So again, I'm just speculating, but that would be my guess.
No, understood. No, yeah, this is classic corporations avoiding responsibilities, So, just terrible, but figure we should bring it up because it was interesting enough. So, but talking about these things is why we're demonetized. You can go ko-fi.com/Indie News Network or scan that QR code on your screen. Shell, if you're listening, if you want to pay us off, right there. Very easy. But otherwise, you can just like and subscribe, hit the share button, share it with your friends, leave a comment. We're trying to get to 2K. We're literally right there. We're on the brink. So kick us over that little hurdle right there. But otherwise, thanks for watching. Alright, let's get to the chats. Indy said he blames Hamas. So probably. Robert Templeton, notice that everyone revolves around resources. Pesky humans are just getting in the way of extracting them. Yep. I'm sure if Shell could figure out a way to get rid of those humans and do it themselves, they would.
Yes.
So, yeah, anyway. Just lovely stuff. And as a member of the area near the Gulf, I am very aware of what oil companies are willing to do to destroy the ecosystem here. We had a few deep water drilling fiascos not that long ago where the oil just disappeared. Where did it go, Collin? Into the ecosystem. That's where it went. It's in there. It's just living in there waiting like a cartoon villain. I'm sure it's doing lovely stuff to some crabs. You're gonna find giant crabs. Do you want giant crabs? Is that what you want? That's how you get giant crabs. Alright? Just saying. Anyway, you ready for your story?
Yep.
Cool.
So June is Pride Month, typically in many cities across the country and around the world, especially through the summer. There's going to be a lot of Pride events. You will probably have, if you're in a major city, especially having a Pride event.
Yep.
So shout out to all of our LGBTQ plus listeners and followers. We appreciate you guys, especially this month. Reef and I actually had talked about doing a Pride related story. We talked about Uganda and the issues regarding the gay community there with JB last year, but I think that was a little before Pride, if I remember correctly. And shout out to Due Dissonance. I think they reported on this story too. I think they might have referred to the article that I'm going to read from, but I saw that they were talking about this and I checked on Google and sure enough, this article popped up. So I was like, here's our pride story. But it relates to Gaza and Israel and how they're being somewhat hypocritical during Pride in what's going on regarding their genocide. So, as I said, this article is from The Guardian, where Emma Graham Harrison, that's such a British name if I ever heard one,
Yeah.
said,
Graham Harrison.
I should talk even I have a
hyphenated.
Similar to that, but I have a hyphenated name, kind of like
Collin Radix-Carter the third.
Something. So she writes, no pride in occupation, queer Palestinians on pink washing in Gaza conflict.
What is
Israel
pink
presents
washing?
itself? What?
I've never heard that
We'll get
term.
there.
Okay.
You will get there. She will explain what that is.
Understood.
Israel presents itself as an LGBT haven in the region, but for Palestinians, it offers neither refuge nor solidarity. So what does she mean by that? So Emma writes, when Daoud, a veteran queer activist, recently walked past rainbow flags hung for Pride Month in the old port city of Jaffa, an historical center of Palestinian culture, he was overcome by a wave of revulsion. The most famous symbol of LGBTQ liberation has been so co-opted by the Israeli state that to a gay Palestinian like him, it now serves only as a reminder of the horror unfolding just 60 miles south. Last November, Israel's government posted 2 images from Gaza on its social media account. One shows Israeli soldier Yoav Atzmoni in battle fatigues in front of buildings reduced to rubble by Israeli airstrikes. He holds a rainbow flag with a hand-drawn message in the name of love.
What?
So this is the picture here.
Gross.
And then in the second, he poses behind a tank, grinning as he displays an Israeli flag with rainbow borders. The first ever pride flag raids in Gaza. The caption for both images reads, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, disgusting.
It is disgusting. At the time, Israeli attacks had killed more than 10,000 Palestinians in Gaza, including more than 4,000 children, according to Gazan Health Ministry figures. The toll has now risen to over 37,000, and more than 1 million people are on the brink of famine. I saw the disgusting use of pride flags in Gaza, said Daoud, a Palestinian citizen of Israel whose name has been changed. He asked for anonymity because Palestinians have faced arrest and persecution for expressing solidarity with civilians in Gaza and criticizing the war. Now, in this period when terrible death looms over all of us, I can't see the pride flag any other way. It really turned my stomach seeing them. It was revolting, he added. Daoud's reaction is shared by many queer people around the world, said Philip Ayub, professor of international relations at University College London, who researches the intersection of politics and LGBTQ+ rights. That cognitive disconnect of seeing what else is in the image, rubble that was people's homes, then seeing the flag being displayed in a celebratory way. It is a massive violation to people who have fought for their rights under this flag.
Disgusting!
Those images from Gaza are part of a long-running international campaign that critics call pink washing, because they say it aims to bolster the Israeli state by linking it with queerness, presenting it as an explicit counterpart to a Palestinian identity depicted as exclusively and violently homophobic.
Yeah.
It exploits political support for LGBTQ+ rights to further an Israeli ultra-nationalistic political agenda and legitimize the oppression of Palestinians, said Saeed Ashan, chair of the Department of Peace and Conflict Studies at Swarthmore College and author of Clear Palestine and the Empire of Critique. This messaging was driven not by genuine enthusiasm for LGBT+ rights from a government that includes a self-proclaimed fascist homophobe as finance minister, he said, but was deployed strategically for political ends.
Well, you don't hear about that guy.
No. The Israeli state has different audiences, as Chan said. If it is addressing LGBT-friendly domestic audiences in Israel or globally, then it whips out this pinkwashing discourse trying to portray Israel as a gay haven. For homophobic audiences, including at home and Christian Zionists abroad, it presents a homophobic discourse about religious conservatism and adherence to family values and revulsion towards queerness.
Yep.
When Mada Makros, a Palestinian citizen of Israel who is a human rights lawyer and award-winning activist, heard that Tel Aviv planned to mark Pride this year, she was stunned. Is there no sense of humanity to realize that there are people being bombed every day in Gaza by your own country, and you're calling for pride and equal rights for queer people? Who cares at the moment if you have equal rights as queers? I honestly don't care, because if we don't have equal rights as humans, it doesn't matter.
Agreed.
Morocco said she was taken aback nearly 2 decades to 2006. That year, there was an Israeli attack on Gaza, and as a head of a Palestinian queer activist group, she campaigned for a boycott of the World Pride Parade hosted by Jerusalem Open House. What wrong timing, what bad timing. Not only then, but now, she said. In fact, it's always the wrong time and there's always the wrong topic, because there's no pride in occupation, whether it is 2006 or now. The scale of death and destruction in Gaza has made the struggle for queer rights less urgent for many LGBT plus Palestinians. For me now, the Palestinian flag should be raised, not the pride flag, Daoud said. So this kind of proves, because we hear online that, or you might hear, there are no queer Palestinians in Gaza, or like, if for all the people who are queer, who are like protesting for Palestine, then people are like, why don't you go there and do whatever you want? And you brought a clip. Well, we've shown this clip, but it bears showing again, just this idea of like, yes, there are queer Palestinians, contrary to what people might say. They may not necessarily live in Gaza, but they do exist in Israel. And you can argue it is a double sword for them in terms of them being criticized for, I think mostly in this case, for being Palestinian, but then also gay, which to an Israeli might be just turned off completely, because mostly they're looking at them as Palestinians, so they're looked at as
I think those people are probably more worried about dying to Israeli bombs than being found kissing their boyfriend by their family. Like, I'm here to tell you, so, and I'm betting their family has a lot more to worry about too. I'm just guessing. So,
yeah, more so than being queer, but yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, Israel's track record on LGBTQ plus rights includes barring discrimination on grounds of sexual orientation, recognizing foreign same-sex marriage, although it has not been legalized there, and allowing same-sex couples to adopt. Well, like, this is something I've mentioned this. I know other people have mentioned this, like, you cannot get married in Israel if you're gay. So does it not as progressive?
Yeah.
Right. Not as progressive as they claim to be. You know. That being said, Israel ranks better than most neighbors on the Equaldex LGBT Equality Index in 50th place globally. Palestinian is ranked 146, with consensual same-sex sexual acts legal in the West Bank, but not in Gaza. But the idea that Israel serves as a regional haven for the queer community feels particularly cruel and hypocritical, activists and academics said, at a time when the LGBTQ plus population of Gaza has no more refuge from Israel bombs than any other Palestinians. There you go. There is no pink door in the wall for queer Palestinians to leave Gaza and make a life in Israel, said Ayu from UCL. The Israeli rhetoric just makes it even harder for LGBT LGBTQ Palestinians because it reinforces the idea that queerness exists nowhere else. It erases the fact that there are Palestinian activists, queer Palestinians.
Yep.
Even for the majority in the LGBTQ plus community, Israel's track record on equal rights is outpaced by its official propaganda. Palestine is a patriarchal society and homophobic, but so is Israel. There are more queer rights in Israel than other Middle Eastern countries, but they're still limited and it's not a major success story, Ayub said. There is a long, well-documented record of the Israeli security services exploiting the sexuality of LGBTQ plus Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and Gaza with devastating and sometimes fatal results. During my training course in preparation for my service in this assigned role, we actually learned to memorize and filter different words for gay in Arabic, a member of Israel's intelligence corps testified a decade ago.
Okay.
If you're homosexual and know someone who knows a wanted person and we need to know about it, Israel will make your life miserable. Last year, a Palestinian from Nablus was publicly executed. He had confessed collaboration with Israel's domestic intelligence agency, Shin Bet, saying they used a video of him having sex with another man to blackmail him into informing. LGBTQ plus Palestinians suffer widespread discrimination and abuse in both public and in family settings in occupied territories, human rights groups say. But those who smuggle themselves across the separation wall into Israel from the occupied territories in search of a more queer-friendly environment and often find instead racist hostility, bureaucratic red tape, and a state of long-term vulnerability. Queer Palestinians seeking asylum in Israel are regularly barred from healthcare and denied resident permits. They struggle to access shelter and therefore face abuse and exploitation, a life of hell documented in a Plus 972 magazine report. Long before the current war, Daoud realized he had little in common with most queer Israeli Jews. He recalls bringing transgender Palestinians from the occupied West Bank to the beach. Most have spent their lives barely an hour's drive away from the Mediterranean, but were barred from traveling to its shores by Israeli restrictions. Some, seeing the sea for the first time, were in tears. I thought, what do I have in common with gays whose entire struggle is to be able to have their partners from Germany or Spain come to live with them there when I'm not even allowed to bring my relative for a visit from the occupied territories, he said. It's not even the same universe. The war in Gaza has only sharpened for him an understanding that even if queer Palestinians did not face such radically different problems, there is little room for a joint struggle with Israeli Jews because most value their privilege in a Jewish state over their shared queerness. Many Jewish counterparts in Israel have anchored their claim for equality in their willingness to serve the state and die in its military campaigns, largely directed against Palestinians, he added. In effect, they are saying, we're willing to partake in the oppression of Palestinians so the state won't oppress us, he said. They got their rights on the backs of Palestinians. Yaji, I'm sorry, I'm going to pronounce Yali, I guess that's how you say it, a transgender Jewish woman who, on the day of Tel Aviv Pride, joined an anti-war demonstration under the rally cry, "No blood washing in our name," shares this critique of Israel's mainstream LGBTQ plus community. Many people in the queer community are drawn to the idea of gaining acceptance by being nationally useful and submissive to the state. Yali said, not because we are human beings, but because we are of service. That vision of queer national identity was prominent at Tel Aviv's Pride this month. The usual parade was canceled for a muted seafront concert that included calls for the release of hostages and celebration of queer Israelis serving in the military, but there was no mention of Palestinian civilians killed in Gaza. Stories shared at the event, including a transgendered woman's decision not to change her official gender identity so she could still serve in the reserves and fight in Gaza. Morkos is baffled by Israelis who describe their country as a democratic haven for the LGBTQ plus community in a hostile region, particularly when real tolerance rarely extends beyond the limits of Tel Aviv, saying, How can you boast of your democracy for queers that then oppresses millions of Palestinians? Oh, so any thoughts? So yeah, that's the end of the article. But any thoughts?
Not really. I mean, it seems about par for the course for them. You know, like
Yeah.
This is similar to me of you know, politicians here in the U.S. where they attach a label to themselves, but then continue to, you know, vote for bloodshed and you know, I don't know how that's any different. You know,
Right.
this is just on kind of a bigger
Yeah,
scale.
Yeah, it's interesting in the article they made up a good point because they mentioned Christian Zionists, and we talked about Christian Zionists several weeks ago. If anything, they should have a problem with how Israel defines themselves as queer friendly. If many of these Christian Zionists have oppositions against gay people in general, they should not necessarily be.
The issue is what Christian Zionism actually is there, right? They don't necessarily care about what's happening in the region. They only wish that Israel own it, so that, you know, Jesus can come back. That's it.
Right.
Which, you know, that's the only reason they care, is because they want the world to end. So, you know, it's whatever, but I feel you. So,
but speaking of that, as I was prepping, I thought about this because I responded to this person maybe like a few months ago.
Right.
Sometimes this is the thing with Twitter. People are pushed on my feed for no reason. I don't know why. But this guy was pushed in my feed for some reason. I think there was this back in the fall, and I happened to find it because in talking about this, it reminded me of this guy. I believe he's gay, white, gay, but Trump supporter, if I remember correctly. So
okay,
hitting it on all cylinders, folks. But anyway, he tweeted, "This is why I won't ever support the radicalized Islamists in Gaza." So notice what he says there. These people would gleefully murder me and my husband, not just for being gay, but for being from the West. This has nothing to do with the laws each has on the books in any given country. This is ideological. The vast majority of Islam is fundamentally divergent from the rest of the Abrahamic faiths. It is controlling, oppressive, and violent. I will continue to point out the absolute idiocy of Western leftist gay people that shill for Palestine when those same Palestinians will kill them with a smile on their face. They'll do it to any Westerner, regardless of if you're gay or not.
So
if
then
you don't
why
believe me,
make the distinction?
Right. If you don't believe me, book a flight.
I think some people fucking did. We're gonna get to that.
Right. Right. And for some reason, because I had time that day, I responded to him, and actually, like, I think this is what I had, back in October. So I tweeted, "You're right that this conflict has ideological roots. This whole thing stems from Zionism. This has nothing to do with religion. Again, you are demonstrating lack of understanding, as I have spoken to a few Israelis who are against what is happening in Israel." So this was October 8th.
It's also, he doesn't understand the core principle of why they might hate Westerners. Like, it has nothing to do with ideologically. It has, we've been feeding them weapons and bloodshed for the last, I don't know how long. Like, since the Crusades, practically. You know? So, they might feel
so
a
just
way.
to give the
Maybe leave them the fuck alone.
so
How
just
about
to
that?
give this guy some context, this is the day after October 7th that he was just shooting shit, you know, in terms of Hamas or whatever.
Hamas.
So he felt like he had a right to say something. Now, there's actually is a gay Palestinian that I do know of on Twitter. His name is Rami. He's based in Spain. So shout out to him. I hope he's okay that I use this from him. But he responded too, in terms of this. So he said, "Except you're wrong about all of this, and ignorance clearly continues to be the most prized Western value. Hope you heal. Much love, a queer Palestinian. P.S. I had 44 members of my family murdered in this genocide. You don't care about queer issues or queer Palestinians if you can't care about me. You're just being racist and Islamophobic. Bombing an entire people isn't how you help them advance queer issues. That will never make you the moral or progressive one. I would almost rather you actually be that self-centered that is justifiable for you to slaughter people en masse for gay rights, but I know it's not even that. You just have hate in your heart for Palestinians because you assume they hate you first. I'm sorry you're so brainwashed and misled. Love is out there. Hashtag Free Palestine. And there's a little bit more. PPS. Fun fact, there have been more hate crimes against gays in America than in Palestine. Yeah, like, so Ty, I believe your name is, talk to any Black trans person of color here about gay rights and let's see what they say to you. You have the privileged white guy being operating in that stance that, yeah, you might be gay, but you're all white. So you do have that shadow of privilege covering your ass.
Shit, how many hate crimes in Israel? Would they even call it a hate crime? Like, you know, ugh.
But anyway, Rami continues, I hope it doesn't come as a shock to learn that queer and gay people aren't really safe anywhere yet, but leveraging those issues to champion a genocide just makes you trash and part of a bigger problem, not part of any solution. So, again, shout out to Rami. Yeah, you can follow him on Twitter. Yeah, like I mean, we don't hear from any Palestinians, especially queer ones, so I'm very happy to know of a queer Palestinian, at least online, that was able to kind of give a rebuke regarding this dumbass's response to the day on the day after October 7th.
He asked people, "Well, take a flight there." So some people did, you know, and we played this before, but I think it's fitting to play again if you've missed it. If you're new here and haven't seen this, I think I got this from Jay Buffont, who shared it, so shout out. But yeah, I'll let them speak for themselves.
Shouldn't be supporting Palestinians if you're LGBTQ. Seriously, they'll murder you. Don't believe me? Go there. See how they treat you. Okay, then let's go. Mission: gather and label supplies, assemble a team, arrive and distribute aid to as many Palestinian families as possible while serving as openly LGBTQ. Here's how it went. But Rain, you're an outsider, so of course it was different for you. Well, that wasn't what y'all claimed. You said Palestinians would murder me. But here, in case you aren't satisfied, our team was largely made up of local LGBTQ plus people and their allies, and they all survived. Oh, and if that's still not good enough because they were providing aid, we found Gazan Palestinian LGBTQ people at this stop, this one, and many more. They all had grown up to adulthood while living within Gaza, Palestine. This rumor is a vicious bit of propaganda meant to dehumanize the victims of one of the deadliest months of bombardment to any territory on this planet in decades, and it's a lie. Now, do LGBTQ people in Gaza, Palestine still need liberation? Yes. Do they have their full rights? No. Is it safe for them to be super open? Most of the times, no. But their struggle isn't unique to Palestinian culture. It's a struggle shared by most LGBTQ people on the planet in different but very adjacent ways. I've experienced similar treatment in Ukraine, Poland, the USA, Colombia, Mexico, Turkey, and more. LGBTQ plus liberation is a lifetime fight, one we're not unfamiliar with, but let me be clear, regardless of the progress of that fight, this is never an excuse to turn our backs on the suffering and liberation of others. Gazan Palestinian LGBTQ plus people and their allies will continue to push for their rights over time, but right now the priority is to push to have a life at all, a home at all, a land at all. Our focus should be on that call for humanitarian aid to every beating heart.
Yeah.
Any questions?
And I just saw something as I was watching this again. I think, you know, even with Ty's critique, you know, he made the assumption that Palestinians equates to Islam, which
not always the case,
is bad.
Yeah.
Which we know
Christian Palestinians,
not all Palestinians are Muslim. There are or Arab, per se, you know, like there are Christian Palestinians, there are Jewish Palestinians, and, you know, not all of them may necessarily subscribe, you know, like, and some if they are, they could be gay, or queer or whatever. But I think it's the association that people generally make is not even so much Palestinian, but Islam is the issue, and Islam tends to have this bad rap of being, a terrorist type religion. And listen, like my youngest sister is Muslim, and I'll tell you, like, she is definitely not a terrorist at all. Like, I will say that, but I think that's kind of that association of not so much Palestinians per se, but the idea of the religion that many people here believe that they subscribe to is the problem, which, again, is not the case. There are Christian Palestinians, there are Jewish Palestinians in addition to, or maybe some may not describe to a religion at all, but it's the fact that they're Palestinian in of itself is the problem, not for the religion. And look, and I'll say this for someone who has been to the Middle East, is there, yes, there is this part of that world where it is kind of predominantly Muslim, and yes, they can be more conservative in ways that, especially as far as sex or whatever, that they're more conservative in that way. But again, I went there as a Black person, and we talked about the hospitality, about within that culture generally. Like, I was treated extremely well in that culture. I think, again, it's the idea of you're going into a culture where that is unique to you. I always go in, especially if it's a new place, I always go in with the idea of respecting that culture. But more importantly, it's the idea of, like, let me learn about you and your culture. And again, like, they would be very open to have those conversations, like with you. So I'm sure if it was an issue regarding, LGBTQ issues, I'm sure we may not have been able to have an agreement, but I'm sure I would have been able to have a discussion about it at least. So it's not to say that all people have this feeling of gay bad. It's the idea of, there's going to be some cultural / religious things that they need to be talking to, but you can also make the argument that people over here that are very conservative and do not think of gay bad, and
parts of
they
Africa,
also need to talk
parts of
to
South
too.
America, parts of India,
Right.
parts of Saudi Arabia,
But it's
who
like
supposedly is our ally,
right, but
parts
it's
of
the idea of, like, it's the idea that people think that we're just so far ahead in LGBTQ rights here. But there's still, like, a lot of discrimination and still a lot of, for the gay rights, for gay community that they need liberation from here as well. That, again, especially if you're a person of color or trans, people are still fighting for. So again, this guy is speaking from the privilege of being white, that he can use that as a cover in terms of not really fully knowing or understanding, or I would honestly argue not caring about those issues as it applies to people of color who are also queer. So it's a more nuanced issue than I think people think it is, but it's the idea of, like, the idea of people having the right to exist regardless of who they are. I think that is at the cusp. I think, honestly, that's the point of pride. It's that the idea of, like, you have a right to exist in this world regardless of who you are. So whether or not you're gay, straight, whatever, and in this case, if you happen to be Palestinian or Israeli, you have a right to exist. And you do not have that right to exclude others on a context of them being, or you considering them an other or less than you. So
And
I
if
get
you're
what these activists are saying. Go ahead.
Palestinian, feel free to have this conversation so that they don't have easy ammo against you as well. I feel like that can be worked out pretty easy.
Right.
But
You should have pride to be who you are, regardless, and not even talking about gender or sexual preference, but like just the idea of, in this case, being able to be a Palestinian, or for me here, being able to be Black, or you being able to be, white Southern, or whatever. Like, you have that right to just be. Like, that's the point of pride, is the idea of fighting for people who, you can make the argument, like, as far as sexual preference or gender identity or whatever, not feeling, that feeling out of place or not feeling accepted. And that's something I think that's the point of these pride events. So the idea that you're trying to exclude people / murdering people on the basis of who they are kind of goes against the idea of pride, which is what these activists are saying. You can't acknowledge you being an Israeli and you having a pride event, and yet you're willingly wanting to kill people different from you on the fact that they're Palestinian. That's makes no sense.
Yeah.
But
well,
anyway, shout out to, all the queer Palestinian people in the world who are trying to rep their rights as Palestinians in addition to being queer. So let us know in the chat or in the comments how you feel about this story. If you want to support us via donation, feel free to scan the QR code or check out the link that you see at the bottom of your screen, and you're able to give out to us financially there. Stories like these are one of the reasons why we are demonetized from YouTube. So we would really appreciate if you like, share, and subscribe like our live stream or our clips to your friends and family. Maybe even this clip, just to, share to people within the gay community who are very much for liberation for whoever it is, including Palestinians. And be sure to make a comment. We're trying to get up to 2K. Right now, we're literally six people away from that at the time of this recording. So please help us help us get over that hump, so we can continue to grow and reach out to more people who would like to hear us. And thanks for watching. We appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
All right.
So before we get to that, we'll go through chat a bit. On Rumble, we had a Rumble rant for $5.
Hey, thank you.
Every day we allow the U.S. war machine continue. We literally sign off on eventual martial law and the destruction of our food supply. Throw wrenches, anything you have, at the disgusting cabal. Yep. Couldn't agree. Let's go to regular chat and scroll up a little. The Zionist entity did a great job in turning the Star of David into a Death Star for me, and that's all I see now. Robert Templeton, as someone LGBT, I condemn IOF. I cannot condone murdering innocent people and then trying to usurp my strife.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just very hypocritical that as an Israeli, you can, and I think Israelis in general, you having the idea of your national pride, I guess, but mostly religious, I guess, cultural pride of being Jewish / Israeli, and then being queer on top of that, and you having the idea of, wanting to be at home and like all of this, but then being willing to kill other people who live in the region because they are who they are, which is Palestinian, and have as much of a right to exist as you do. So and then just even with that is that it seems like in the article just kind of say that people are willing to forego, not to say their rights, but but to almost forego their identity as queer people to kill Palestinians in the IEF. That that, like, what kind of cognitive dissonance is that? Like, that I don't get that at all. But it's but even with that, it just kind of but even with that, it's like, is it truly a democracy where you have to almost let go of that, the stance of who you are, almost, to be able to fight for a cause against others who share that same identity in terms of your sexual preference / gender identity, that you're willing to kill them in order to almost maintain yours? That makes no sense. Like, if you're looking for the liberation, that kind of liberation for yourself, you should want that for everybody. And that may include people that you may not necessarily like. So, so yeah, it's just kind of weird that kind of dissonance of, oh, I'm willing to forego my gayness, my gayness / queerness to essentially kill other queer people but they happen to be Palestinians, so who cares? So yeah, it's just very, very odd to me.
Mastermind Hour. Islamophobia is the Zionist best propaganda trick to date. Yep.
Yeah.
So, and
which
we
is
have
not talked
facilitated
about
in that
nearly as often as it should.
Yeah. But anyway, Rockfin apparently is having an error code again. Not sure what's going on with Rockfin. But supposedly they're looking into it. So hopefully they work that out on Rockfin. Meanwhile, you can always check us on Rumble. We also have a stream up on Twitter. If you're subscribed to our Twitter at GetIndieNews, you can watch us on there as well. But I have a story for us. We're going to talk about bananas. Everyone's favorite fruit. So you know about banana republics, yes?
Yeah.
Very simple stuff. So we're going to get into it.
You can argue we live in one.
Yeah. So Chiquita is liable for banana worker murders. This, of course, Brett Wilkins at A Common Dreams. Jurors in West Palm Beach, Florida, found the banana giant responsible for funding a right-wing paramilitary group in the 1990s and 2000s and awarded $38.3 million in damages to 8 families. So let's get into it. Brett writes, in what case litigants are calling the first time an American jury has held a U.S. corporation legally liable for atrocities abroad, federal jurors in Florida on Monday found that Chiquita Brands International financed a Colombian paramilitary death squad that murdered, tortured, and terrorized workers in a bid to crush labor unrest in the 1990s and 2000s. What does that sound like? Yay.
It sounds very much what's happening in the Middle East right now.
Yep. So the federal jury in West Palm Beach, Florida, found the banana giant responsible for funding the United Self-Defense Forces of Colombia and awarded 8 families whose members were murdered by the right-wing paramilitary group $38.3 million in damages. The jury's decision reaffirms what we have long asserted. Chiquita knowingly financed the AUC, a designated terrorist organization, in pursuit of profit, despite the AUC's egregious human rights abuses, the group said, by providing over $1.7 million in illegal funding to the AUC from 1997 to 2004. Chiquita contributed to untold suffering and loss in the Colombian regions of Urubay and Magdalena, including the brutal murders of innocent civilians, Earthrights added. This historic verdict also means some of the victims and families who suffered as a direct result of Chiquita's actions will finally be compensated. So, Danziger, breaking in a landmark victory for human rights, a U.S. jury just found Chiquita guilty of funding death squads in Colombia that were killing people near the company's banana farms. First time U.S. courts hold major corporation accountable for human rights abuses abroad. So, Yeah, I mean, this is also reminiscent of, labor deaths, right? There's plenty of instances of those here in this country for sure. But anyway, plaintiff's attorney Agnasi Fresman, why you gotta have such a hard name? That's way too many consonants in that name. Said the verdict does not bring back the husbands and sons who were killed, but it sets the record straight and places accountability for funding terrorism where it belongs, at Chiquita's doorstep. The U.S. labor reporting site, More Perfect Union, called the verdict an unprecedented win against corporate violence, which could be the first of many. I doubt that. No. A Chiquita spokesperson told FruitNet that the company plans to appeal the verdict. Like
Very
they would.
appropriate name.
Yep, FruitNet. The AUC was formed in 1997 via the union of right-wing paramilitary groups battling leftist guerrillas, mainly the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia and National Liberation Army in the South America's nation civil war. Closely linked to Colombia's U.S.-backed military, the AUC, some of whose members were trained by Israelis. What? What? Linked to Colombia's U.S.-backed military, the AOC, some of whose members were trained by Israelis, so it's fucking Israelis again. God damn it.
We've talked about this. The Israeli web goes long and wide.
Deep,
worldwide.
Does it not? Usually when it involves gathering resources from brown people, so...
Right.
was designated a terrorist organization.
Giving brown people the arms in which to
murder other brown people with resources. Yes.
Right.
So they were designated a terrorist organization in 2001 by the State Department, which cited its massacres, kidnappings of civilians, and participating in the trafficking of narcotics. So, Scott Parson, United Fruit finally gets its just desserts. In many ways, these fruit companies are the epitome of the bloody U.S. empire in Latin America. It's also an important reminder that Chiquita's actions occurred during the tenure of NATO liberal Billy Clinton. Horrible and disgusting. As you do.
Disgusting!
But, BigMadCrab, INN member, says there's nothing else to call this other than capitalism. Yes.
Yep.
Very, very true. So, in 2007, Chiquita pleaded guilty in federal court to funding the AOC and agreed to pay a $25 million fine in hopes it would go away. The company admitted to paying the AUC via its wholly owned Colombian subsidiary, Banadex. What does that sound like? We just read a story about companies using local subsidiaries to get out of legal trouble, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. So, which was also its most profitable operation. Chiquita recorded these transactions as security payments or payments for security or security services in its corporate records. Chiquita said that it began making the payments after Carlos Castaño, who led the AOC at the time, implied that Banadex employees and property could be harmed. However, despite critics say because of the payments, AOC brutally targeted Banadex workers in what victims and their advocates say was an effort to suppress labor unrest. This is what happens. An earlier lawsuit described the fate of one victim who was identified by the pseudonym Pablo Perez. In the early morning hours of November 1st, 1997, a group of heavily armed paramilitaries dressed in camouflage uniforms stormed Pablo Perez's home in the village of Guacamayal in the banana zone of Magdalena. While he was sleeping, the paramilitaries broke down the door to the home, found and seized him, tied him up, and forced him to accompany them at gunpoint, beating him as they kidnapped him. His corpse was found the following morning with signs of torture and 2 gunshots, one to the head and one to the body. According to plaintiffs in the case, in 2001, a ship carrying 3,000 AK-47s, assault rifles, and 5 million rounds of ammunition, Lord, I see what you've done for other people, If you could just let that come my way, thank you very much. Instead of heading to its declared destination, left Nicaragua and instead headed to its declared destination in Panama, dropped off the arms at a Bandidex-run port in Turbo, Colombia. Castaño called the procurement the greatest achievement by the AUC so far. The earlier lawsuit states that in addition to using the money provided by Chiquita to drive the leftist guerrillas out of the Santa Marta and Araba banana growing regions, AUC militants would resolve complaints and problems with banana workers and labor unions. Among other things, when individual banana workers became security problems, Chiquita noted that the AUC, which responded to the company's instructions by executing the individual. The document states, according to AUC, a large number of people were executed on Chiquita's instructions in the Santa Marta region. Chiquita has a long history of deadly repressions against workers. Formerly, the United Fruit Company, the infamous octopus, the New Orleans-based behemoth, monopolized land and markets throughout Latin America in the 20th century. Through slick marketing campaigns, the UFC introduced the previously unknown banana to consumers in North America and beyond. The company propped up so-called banana republics, extraction economies characterized by state repression, severely stratified social classes, and compliant local plutocracies throughout the region. Sounds familiar. The United Fruit Company stopped at nothing, including participation in U.S.-backed coups, to protect its property and profits. By the 1930s, UFC controlled around 90% of the U.S. banana import business. It owned or controlled nearly half of Guatemala's land in the 1940s. In Colombia, where UFC reporters earned the approximate equivalent of $1 per month, UFC refused to negotiate with workers who went on strike in 1928 in Ciénaga, near Santa Marta. U.S. and UFC officials falsely portrayed the strike as communist subversion, and Colombia's right-wing government deployed 700 troops to crush the labor action. Gotta go get those commies, Collin. Gotta get them. The U.S. Embassy subsequently informed then Secretary of State Frank Kellogg that I have the honor to report that the total number of strikers killed by the Colombian military exceeded 1,000. So, little documentary that we're going to get to called The Banana Massacre, but just wanted to get your thoughts before we head to that.
I mean, once again, you kind of reported on this on your other segment where you talk about Shell trying to move out from Nigeria and leaving them to clean up the mess, essentially. Same shit. Except with bananas and in Colombia. But, but there's actual death in, there was both deaths in both of them too. You know, so it's just the idea of corporations trying to pay off a smaller subsidiary in order for them to keep the money, but watch their hands clean of their destruction. So, so it again, it's just, I said it in the last segment, and I'll say it again, it's East Palestine. Just with bananas, or last time with oil. So, that's capitalism. Yes.
Well, let's get to this documentary. Again, a segment from the Banana Massacre. So, enjoy. They're going to talk about it a little bit better than I did. So, Banana Land Blood, Bullets and Poison. So, yep.
In 1899, a struggling railman in Central America partnered with the budding Boston Fruit Company to form the United Fruit Company. The goal? Make the banana the cheapest fruit in the USA. The scope of the company grew quickly and enormously. The company's reach was so ubiquitous that it became known throughout Central America as El Pulpo, or the octopus. United Fruit created a transport monopoly. If you wanted to move fruit over land, you did it with UFC. The company controlled shipping and all major ports in the region. Cheap land and cheaper labor were guaranteed by propping up repressive regimes. Radio networks ensured logistical efficiency and served as ready outlets for propaganda.
Bananas son la vía para la democracia.
Soon, everybody who was anybody owned United Fruit stock. And Washington quickly decided that what was good for bananas was good for the USA. UFC had entered every part of its workers' lives. And in December of 1928, in Colombia's Santa Marta Banana Zone, the workers had had enough and organized a strike. They wanted to be paid money instead of company scrip, along with a 6-day work week, an 8-hour workday, and a written contract commensurate with working conditions in the United States.
So, what were the demands? They wanted actual monies and not monopoly money.
Right.
And, like, an 8-hour workday. God fucking forbid. And
Right.
to make those demands, what happened?
But they were immediately labeled communists and radicals by the Colombian government, U.S. Embassy, and UFC. On December
And what
6,
year was
1928.
This was in the 20s,
1928, yeah.
right?
Yep, that's why everyone's in black and white.
Around the same time,
Yep.
as, worker revolution here.
Yep.
So,
Mm-hmm.
El Pulpo demonstrated its power. All of this was done with the full support of the U.S. State Department, as a Marine frigate observed the situation from the harbor.
Jack, send this off to Washington. I have the honor to report that the Bogota representative of the United Fruit Company told me yesterday that the total number of strikers killed by the Colombian military exceeded 1,000.
Sound familiar?
Yep.
So, I mean, I feel like history doomed to repeat itself, no? So, finish out, violence against Colombian banana workers continued into the 21st century, often with impunity for the perpetrators. Litigants in Doe v. Chiquita said Monday's jury decision marked the beginning of a new era of accountability. This verdict sends a powerful message to corporations everywhere. Profiting from human rights abuses will not go unpunished. God, I wish that were the case. Earth Rights International General Counsel Marco Simmons said in a statement, these families, victimized by armed groups and corporations, asserted their power and prevailed in the judicial process. So, anything to say before we finish this out? I think
labor ain't sexy. That's our
Nope.
new thing. And
Yep.
labor kills. I should say that too. Like, yeah, but yeah, it's the idea. Yeah, but even here, at this, I think that's a subtopic is that, these workers were essentially organizing to essentially have worker rights, and in Colombia at this time, you don't necessarily hear of that, especially given that time in history in the global South, or at least that's not reported upon that much. We hear a lot, in terms of in the West, in Europe, and in the States, but not necessarily in the global South. But so the idea that you're having workers in Colombia actually, pushing for those rights and up to the death. Literally to the death. I think and it's still happening, honestly. Like now, it's probably just a lot more overt now in terms of, in given, what's happening. But yeah, but it's still the same idea of capitalism wanting to do its best in terms of fending for the machine that is the corporations and not for the workers, which they will use and abuse in order to get the profit. And so, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just an example of how capitalism destroys, literally, in terms of not just here, but globally. But usually it's by our hand, often enough. That I think that's the kicker. That's often by us, and then like when we get what we want, again, throw it off to the country themselves or affiliate of that country to be like, do you take care of that, you know, and just kind of move on. So
And we should probably talk
that's
about
the gag right there.
more historical Union massacres, because there's been a few, which I don't think many people know that history, especially here in this country. That's kind of, you know, definitely not in the books you're given in school. So, but yeah.
Right.
I'm escaping to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism. Space!
Where's Boeing and Elon heading?
Well, that's the next frontier.
Yes, it is. Open for profitability. So, speaking of profitability, YouTube won't let us have any, so we had to go to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network or scan that QR code on your screen if you want to get around that a little bit. The censorship, you can do that, and support us monetarily. If you can't, you can just hit like and subscribe, sharing this video, leaving comments, let us know how good we're doing, you know, and help us get to 2K. We're getting there. We're like 6 people away. So hit that button. Get us over that. Make me change this slide to 3K. You know? So, but otherwise, thanks for watching. Alright, 2 chats here, Bear, and then we'll get to our last story. Or was that our last story?
No,
what
that
am
was
I
it.
doing?
That
Jesus
was it.
Christ.
Yeah.
Well, we'll still get to chats anyway before we head out of here. Where it is? Here it is. So, let's scroll back up. Yes, and they created a monolith on a specific type of banana where there are literally dozens of varieties, so many better varieties than the shit we have in the supermarket. Fun fact, Colin.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, fun fact, the banana that is artificial banana, you know, like the banana Laffy Taffies, that stuff, that is just a old breed of banana. That's what that flavor is.
Right.
That's why it doesn't taste like banana the way you know banana tastes like. Now, yes, that's the Cavendish banana is what we have here. And the issue is that bananas are generally cloned, right? Like, not grown from seed in, like, businesses like Chiquita and whatever, right? So
right, yeah, because if you had a banana plant, they take forever. Well, pineapples too. They take forever and a day to grow to be fully ripened. Like,
and
I think for a pineapple, it takes definitely upwards of a year to grow one on one plant, and like bananas, probably about the same amount of time, honestly. So
yes, once you get a tree up, it will continue to produce. But yeah, I mean, it's
not quick. They're not quick. So
no, it's orchard sort of situation. Now, Jamaicans been slow farming it. They've been, you know, there's some stuff. The issue is that when you have it all as one clone species, right, very susceptible to disease, which has happened previously to bananas, right? We've lost entire species of bananas because you're growing large amounts of a single species, sometimes a single, like, plant, pretty much, like it is cloned. It is the same plant, right? So, you know, one gets a disease, that disease sweeps its way through this plantation, destroying all your crop, and most likely the plantation next to you and the plantation next to you after that also gets affected. And there goes, I mean, it's literally has cost lives. So, you know, it's just terrible farming practice, but, you know, it literally became the cheapest fruit in the country. So, partially for the reasons of not paying workers to collect it. Yeah.
Not paying and then cloning it versus actually growing it, which, as I said, takes forever and a day to grow. Like,
and there's a classic thing from, you know, evangelicals who think, you know, evolution didn't happen, right? Where they bring out a banana and they go, this is like a God perfect fruit. Like, you can hold it in your hand, easily edible, like, not realizing we did that that was us. We made bananas like that. Like,
right.
Actual wild bananas are like full of seeds and, you know, are not easily obtained. Like, it's just, anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
But,
Dr.
yeah, that is definitely...
Pineapple takes 7 years. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. You used to be able to rent pineapples. Pineapples used to be a sign of wealth. And,
yes,
like, you'd rent them, leave them on a table, never eat them, you know, and then give them back to the pineapple people. But yeah, that's like, was it
I was very fortunate.
Era?
Yeah, I was very fortunate when I lived in Uganda to actually eat pineapple ripe.
Yeah.
Like from the plant.
Mm-hmm.
And it was delicious.
It was way different.
I will admit, I mean, like, after that, honestly, I cannot eat pineapple here.
Domenico bananas, muy delicioso, by the way. Those are the little tiny ones.
Yeah.
Little baby bananas. Yeah. So good.
Yeah, my dad in his office in London has a a banana tree. Tiny, and I think it might have produced, if I remember, there was definitely one bunch that he was able to grow that I remember vividly.
I mean, I can't even get...
remember as a kid.
I can't even get the white folks to be eating plantains, let alone other types of bananas. So, and I'm like, how do you... Plantains are just, like, it's like a potato. You pretty much banana potato. Just, like, fry it, put some salt on it, you'll be fine. You know? I don't know why this is that hard. Like, I'm not even getting to, like, mofongo, and not even getting there. But
I think it's kind of like a texture thing. I think for me, that's my issue with ice cream, which is why I don't like it. It's kind of like a textural sensation that does not compute with me. I think it's like bananas is kind of like that for some people.
Yeah.
You know, so I can understand it in those terms, given that I don't eat ice cream and people are like, what's wrong with you? Like, you don't eat ice cream.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't like it. But I think it's more of a texture thing.
Yeah.
If anything else. So.
Well.
But anyway,
this is happening this week. We have a calendar.
Yep,
Look at all the lovely shows. A whole week full of stuff on INN.
So tomorrow, we do want to announce this. So Crab and Himbo will be on with Due Dissonance. They'll be popping by to talk to them tomorrow night at 9. Friday, Angel is going to be on for Angel in the Afternoon at 7, followed by American Tradition Clip Show at 10:30. Saturday, there'll be Himbo will be gaming. That'll be at 11. All these times are Eastern times for our new folks, by the way. Sunday will be How Do We Miss That with you and Indy at 10, followed by Boats, which will be exclusive on Rumble at midnight. Monday, I believe we're going to do this again, but we've been doing like a marathon of streams regarding to Palestine. So any streams that we've done over the last couple of years related to Palestine, we've been streaming as like a show. So definitely a good way to kind of hear of the stories that we've reported on regarding Palestine over the last couple of years, and especially within the last few months. So please check that out. No American Tradition next week, given that they went live with that yesterday. And then we'll be back next week for our 114th episode of INN News. Yeah, shout out to Indy for making this.
Yeah, it makes it easier. For sure.
So, no Tara this week, as you can tell from the schedule. So, but yeah, everything else should be going live as normal. But if there are any changes, check us out on Twitter/X at Kennedy News to just get updates on shows, especially if there are any changes or any updates on shows, so that you guys are.
Yeah. No, makes sense to me. So, anything else? think that's it.
I think so.
Cool. Well, as always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a good week, everyone.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Bye, have a great time.